Hi, and welcome to Simply Chic by V, episode 3. On this episode, we have a special guest, one of my longest best friends of all time, Christiane Arguello. I can't wait for you guys to listen in and see how we navigate motherhood and singlehood in our 30s. Thank you so much for joining me and being my first guest on my podcast.
Go me.
Yes. So to get started, I feel like we should talk about our friendship so that people can get to know like how we became friends, how long we've been becoming friends, how long we've been friends. And yeah, so they can get to know our friendship a little bit in the background about that. So I would love to hear your version.
Um, when did we become friends? Sixth grade, right? I think we met in sixth grade, and then we actually became close in seventh, for the bus, Carver Middle School, on
Yes.
the back of the bus. That's when we became besties. And yeah, just like I think you're my first legit real best friend that like confided in all those years in middle school and high school and all that good stuff. Um, and yeah, just stayed friends forever, right?
Yeah. So we are in our 30s. I'm 34. I don't know if Christine wants to say how old she is, but clearly went to.
I'm 33. First of all, I'm younger here.
So we've been friends for over 15 years, which sounds crazy to me. Alessandra's just peeping in because she wants to be a part of the whole thing. So she keeps like looking at the screen because she hasn't seen Christy. Because the other thing is that Christy actually moved away. So now she lives in Arizona and we miss her.
I know, but I'm gonna see her so soon. I'm excited.
Yes. So that's something we want to talk about. One of the topics we want to talk about with friendships and long lasting friendships is how to maintain friendships when you're long distance because it's not easy. And Christy actually moved away once before. She was living in Atlanta for a couple of years and then she moved back to Miami and now she moved away again. So maybe we can give some insight and tips on that and how that was for our friendship because for sure there was a season where we were a lot more distant and I feel like we've gotten closer now again. Um, and maybe sharing a little bit of like that journey on your side. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what I've learned about friendship in general is I've always been a good friend in general, but being a friend is work. Like just like any other relationship, whether it's boyfriend, girlfriend, marriage, or friendship, like it's really important to put in the work. And I think a lot of people lose that because it's just hard, with work, with life, like with all the stuff you have going on the other side. So for sure, when I moved to Atlanta, that was my first time ever moving away. And I was super overwhelmed, like with my relationship, with my job. Um, just there was a lot going on at the time. So I definitely didn't make the effort with my childhood friends or my home friends as much as I should have, just because even nowadays, like when I FaceTime, like Daniela, who you can talk about later, like will literally be like, a week goes by and she's like, your whole life changed. I'm like, I know, like things just happen so quickly that if you don't do those intentional weekly check-ins, you can just life just passes you by and it's just so hard to gain all of that back. So with moving to Arizona, I have made it very intentional to make sure to check in with my friends a lot more often, not just with texting, but like FaceTimes or random phone calls or anything, even though, you have a baby, you're married, like there's so much going on. I have like a completely opposite schedule from you. Plus, I'm 3 hours behind now. So that's a whole nother thing.
Alessandra's like, yeah, tell me about it. No, for sure. I would say, like, on my aspect, I agree. I think when you first moved, I think part of it on my end was also like you were acclimating and it was a new place. So I felt like a lot of it was like, yeah, she needs to like figure it out and make friends there. And like, so I don't think there was like an urgency on my end either of like maybe like the following up. Like, yeah, obviously at first it's like, hey, how are you? But like once you know you're settled in, it's really like letting you kind of do your life. And you were in a relationship at the time too, which let's be real, relationships consume us. And it's easier to be like, oh, like busier or like have less thought maybe of like your friendships because you have someone in the day to day. So I
Mhm.
feel like at that time, like that's how I saw it. And for sure, we're also going all of us through like a lot of life changes and like different things and whatever. And then the other thing that I think that is tough for me is, which I appreciate you saying, like being intentional with like FaceTime and calling, is because like I'm a really bad texter in general, even when you guys live here and like she's making
Oh,
up
I
like
know.
yeah. Um, and like everyone's always called me out on it. And in general, like if you meet me for the first time through text, forget it. You don't know who I am, because then you meet me in person, you're like, you're a totally different person. Like I don't shut up, I talk a lot, but in text I'm very dry. I use punctuation, like I don't do any emojis. I've gotten so much better. Yes or no?
You definitely have, because the LOLs were killing me. LOL, okay, period. I'm like, what did I do? Why are you mad at me?
Literally. But I've had like lessons in my texting emojis like from other people. And mind you, it's so funny because like I am a millennial, but I think I text like I'm a boomer. Like I'm very like exclamation point, period. Like when I know used to kill you all the time was whenever I would put like whatever, because you thought that it was like she's rolling her eyes.
God.
She would be like, why are you mad at me? What's the attitude? And I'm like, no, like whatever you guys want. And it was like, that's not how she was reading it. She was like, whatever you want, but whatever. So with that, it's tough for sure, like with me, because texting is not like my forte. And I am someone that like I do better in relationships on the phone and in person. So that's why it's important to like, make the time for FaceTime or for phone calls. And something else that we've done, not as much right now, but we've done more that I think is good too, is like voice notes, because
Mhm.
you can for sure get like the moment of, excuse me. Oh, she's like slammed into my mic. Yeah, mama. She's getting a little restless. We can, yeah, yeah. I could do get avec Christy, ¿verdad? Yeah, yeah. Come on.
It just looks like she just wants to party.
She already napped and she ate, so she wants to play. I might put her in a playpen in a second. Um, she's like biting her. She doesn't like pacifiers, but she'll like bite the heck out of them, which is so funny. This one's like all silicone, that's why she likes it. Because she already has her teeth. Anyway,
Mm.
so what I was saying is that like it's harder to kind of navigate that if you don't make the time. And like with voice notes, the reason I like it is because you can get the emotion right away of like the person. And something, yeah. And something I've appreciated is like I'm the type of person too that I'm very like in the moment. Like it's hard for me to like go back and recap something with the same emotion. So unless I'm kind of sharing in the moment, like voice notes are kind of good at that. Like where I'm like, oh my God, this just happened or whatever, like blah, blah, blah. So I think I have to get better at that, but you've gotten really good at that. And I appreciate, because it makes me feel like I'm living in the moment of like what's going on. Because of what you were saying, then like you talk to Danielle and a week passes by and you're like, wait, what? Like when did
Yeah.
that happen? Yeah. And it's like, you don't know because you haven't told us or we haven't asked. She's looking at the other camera up there.
She's just fascinated by all the technology.
I know. And she loves taking her pictures and looking at the screen, even though she's not allowed to have screen time yet. So yeah, for sure it's something that I think is really important to kind of like put in the effort and make it a priority. Oh, sorry. Another thing that like kind of leads into the other thing we want to talk about is that is stages of life. It's hard when you're in different stages of life and friendship, because I feel like in high school it's easier, right, to maintain friendships, or even college, because you're in the same kind of thing. Like you're in school, you're seeing each other at the same times, or same thing like in college, like you start having different life experiences, but overall you're kind of having similar things. But I was in a stage of like getting married, having a baby, and you were in a stage of like starting over in your life, ending a relationship and starting new and redoing your career and like getting all that. So I think it's even harder because I think it takes even more effort on both ends, for sure. And then like how that's important to each of us, and like how in friendships you have to really understand and accept where everyone's at in life, and like not minimize or think like the other person's stuff is not important, because I think that's not fair. But I think that's what happens like subconsciously in friendships, right? Where you're like, oh, well, whatever I have going on is like so overwhelming or consuming or like really important to me that like you put other things to the side. Oh,
Yeah, which is like not necessarily okay. And it's again, it's just putting in the work, because even if you don't want to feel that way, sometimes you subconsciously end up feeling that way. Because there's definitely moments where like something is happening in my life and I want to tell you, but it's like, oh, well, she's like totally breastfeeding right now. Like she's just so busy, like there's no time for that. But then, well, it was easier when I was in Miami and I could just come over and tell you all my my wild stories as you're literally like pumping breast milk into Alessandra. And I'm just like, yeah, and then blah, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah. But yeah, at the end of the day, like it doesn't matter. Like the thing with friendships, and it's hard to keep friendships later in life for sure because of those things. But just being conscious of the fact that it doesn't matter what you're doing and it doesn't matter what I'm doing because I care about our friendship enough to still hear about it.
for sure.
So that's definitely like the important part of it.
Yeah. I would love for you to share as much as you want about like your life, like where you are right now in life and your journey and in your 30s. Because I feel like a lot of women our age, and even younger and older, have expectations of like where they should be in their life at certain stages and ages. And I know that I went through that and we all go through that in different ways. So I'd love for you to kind of like talk a little bit and give an insight on that. And then I can share a little bit of my story.
Yeah, I mean, my life is very different from like the traditional place that I guess I thought I would be when I was 33, right? Like I thought I would be married, maybe have a kid, have a house, like all the things, and I'm doing absolutely none of that, and I'm like very happy about it, right? Like the thought of a child is just like I'll be little Thea, but like I don't know about having one. That's a little much for me. I do not want a house whatsoever. Like I don't want any of like the traditional things that people want or are longing for these days. And obviously sometimes it gets hard just because I see people my age and I'm like, should I have these things? But then I had to think to myself, I mean, do I want these things? Not really. Like I love the fact that I can quite literally do whatever I want. Like I moved to Arizona on a whim. Like I didn't know anyone here. I've never even visited Arizona. I was just like fascinated about all the things that like it had and about the fact that I could travel more West Coast because it's obviously harder to travel on the West Coast when you live on the East Coast, right? It's more money, it's more time, whatever, the time difference, all that stuff. So the fact that I was able to do that and just look for a job, got a job, got an apartment unseen and do it, like I love that for me. Versus like doing all the traditional things. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's just kind of like I feel like I lived my life for so long focusing on those things and focusing like on a relationship where I should have been focusing on myself or just because I wanted to achieve these things. And now I get to just like live my life for me and do all the things that I want to do. Um, and if that stuff comes later, like that'd be great, I guess. Like that's totally fine. But it's just fun to be, and I'm also just like not very much of a routine person. So it is definitely exciting to not have like the routine of life and just kind of like live life for what it was. Maybe like healing my inner child or something. I don't know, but I
But
love it. I love my life. So
that's great. I think honestly, what maybe a lot of people would hear that maybe there's a bunch of women that maybe want that and desire that, but are kind of scared because I feel like what you did is very brave. Yeah,
yeah.
this time I think so too. Because it takes a lot of courage to just get up and start over alone, somewhere you've never been with, you don't know anybody in Arizona. It's really like picking up and starting all over. Um, I oh my goodness, this girl's restless. I think that it is really admirable. And it takes a lot of courage. I think also like I don't know if necessarily it has to do or not, but like coming from both of us come from like immigrant parents that came to this country and like started over. Sometimes I see like whenever I feel a little bit afraid about something. Yeah, when I'm a little bit afraid about maybe starting something new, I would just remember that like my mom literally got on a plane and moved here, like not knowing where her life was gonna be, and decided to like
Yeah.
stay and start a whole life. And like my aunt came over like pregnant and like wanted to do a life here for my cousin. Like I think maybe some inspiration is driven from there, I guess, of like your fearfulness and boldness, because I think that's pretty, I don't know if you would say so, but I feel like it might be.
I mean, honestly, I never even really thought about that. But yeah, for sure. Like that makes sense. I mean, our parents literally came here not knowing anything about this country, right? And they made it work. I think that's definitely part of it. For me, I think I mostly just focus on like the fact that I don't want to look back on life when I'm old and be like, I wish I would have done this, which I feel like is what happens a lot with people who do like strive for like societal norms versus what they want out of their own life. And I just know that there's a lot in my life that I want to do that I don't want fear to take me back from it. And like that's obviously easier said than done, but it definitely is inspiring when you see, and you don't really, I mean, for me personally, I don't really see it with the people that I'm close with because I think I'm probably the most ballsy of my friends for sure. But like you see it like maybe like on TikTok or on Instagram, like you'll see these people who are like, I moved across the country or I moved to Europe or I moved to XYZ and did all these things. And you see it and you get excited about it, but you're like, but I can't do that because like it's not easy, right? Like, and I don't come from money. Like, I didn't do this with like mom and dad's bank account, like whatsoever. I did it like with my own. Not that I have like money or anything like that, but enough to be able to feel comfortable to do this. So for me, it's definitely just a drive in like, I don't want to have any regrets later. And like, none of those societal norm things are out of the realm of possibility. Like I can still do them, but as we get older, we only get more responsibilities and it's only going to be harder to do something like this. And if I stay here forever, we'll see. Maybe I don't. Maybe I do come back to Miami or maybe I end up moving somewhere else. I don't know.
Right.
But right now, I don't have anything holding me back from being able to do it.
That's super good.
And I know like also a lot of people stay stuck in a lot of and they stay stuck in dead end jobs or they stay stuck in relationships that they're not happy but they don't want to admit it or they stay stuck in a city that they hate or they just stay stuck. And I hope like if there's anything, I hope even if it's like a random person that I meet on the street and I tell them, I hope that they feel some kind of like, ooh, like I should do that, like I'm capable of doing that too, there's because I you are. Anyone can do anything they want. If you don't like your life, change it. You can. There's nothing holding you back.
For sure. I know, like in my life, when I have felt like stuck or kind of like unhappy in a situation, but I kind of stayed, a lot of it for me is like I have a type A kind of like personality and perfectionism. And like it was kind of like I didn't want to like change it because I felt like that was like giving up. Even though it's silly and ridiculous because if you're unhappy and things are not working, whether that's a relationship or a job or whatever, like at the end of the day, you should want to start over and you should want to be able to like, do something different. And it's not giving up because you're gonna like, reinvent yourself and start over. Obviously, easier said than done. That's why I think it's really admirable that you do things even when you're scared. Because obviously, like it wasn't easy for you to just pick up and like go
Yeah.
to Arizona. But you kind of knew like this is what I don't want for my life. I'm like, I'm gonna do the scary thing, right? And I don't know if you ever,
Mhm.
I think there's like a meme or something online that's like talks about everything in life. Like, let's say like a diet, and it says like, oh, being on a diet is hard, but being overweight is hard. Like being alone is
Mhm.
hard, but being in the wrong relationship is hard. Like things like that. So
Mhm.
you have to choose your hard at the end of the day, and that is for sure what really matters. Um, and I would say this: being a mom is the greatest thing I've ever done in my life. I love it. I've always knew that I was gonna be a mom, but I tell people all the time, make sure you are ready to give up
Yeah.
independence because I'm a very, very independent person. And I literally love this little girl and do anything and everything for her. But 100%, you lose a lot of time for yourself. You can't do a lot of the things you want to do. Let me also say this. This is relative to like how active and involved as a parent you want to be. And it is very important
Yeah.
to want to give my daughter everything of my love, my attention, and like keep her safe. And because I like I think it's wise also you talk about all the time, like you should have children when you want them, when you're ready for them to be selfless. And there's nothing wrong, not to say like, oh, you're being selfish, like that's a wrong thing. No, it's enough self-awareness to know, like, hey, I'm not ready to give up, like picking up and going whenever I want and doing whatever, like literally leaving the house takes an extra 2 hours and you have to plan everything. And
Yeah.
it's a lot. And I'm a planner and it's a lot. So yeah, I definitely think that like being aware of what you want in life and out of life and what stage of life you're in is really, really important. Because at the end of the day, too, like a kid's forever. It's not just like, oh,
Yeah.
I had a baby and like it was like the first few months or the first few years. It's like even when she's grown and like 30, I'm gonna be in her like right? Yeah, I hope so. He's gonna let me be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like with that, like a lot of people end up having kids because they're unhappy with their life and they just think that this is going to fix it.
Oh,
And
100.
it's like, I'm self-aware enough to know that like I could have gone that route if I wanted to, you know, like I
Right.
could just have a kid and be like, well, now I feel fulfilled because obviously it is fulfilling to take care of a literal human. But like, yeah, I'm not ready for that. And I could get ready for that. And I would want that possibly in the future, but not right now. I want to be able to pick up and do whatever I want whenever I want. I don't want to lose my independence yet.
I also think, like what you were saying about that, like, oh, she hit the mic. She just wants to play with my mic. Hold on. Let's do a break. I'm gonna take her and put her in the bouncer. Okay, back. I totally forgot what I was saying, but it's fine.
Oh my God, I did too. But you were ready to say something very, very eloquent.
I think I'm trying to think. I think what I was gonna say, because I feel this way genuinely, is that I also feel like you should, like, when you decide that, let's say you want to have a baby and you want to have a family, I don't think children should be something you have to fulfill you. And I say this kind of like, I don't know, that's not the full way of explaining it. I don't know how to explain it well, because I do think it's like, for me, I always thought I want to be a mom. It's really important to me to be a mom, because I think part of what I have inside of me, what I want, is to nurture and to give love and to have a family and build everything that comes from having a child. But I wanted to be in a place emotionally healthy and mentally where, like, I didn't need my kid to be healthy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I want to be that for them because I'm the adult. I'm the anchor. I don't want them to have to fill a void in my heart. I want to feel whole before bringing a child into the world. They're an addition to our lives. And for so many people, will say after having a kid, you're like, oh, I didn't realize how empty my life was. And like, yes, it does feel that way, but it's because you have room for them to grow and to fit into. I just wanted to be like the healthiest parent that I can be for them. And I think sometimes people fall into that where like they're not ready to necessarily have a kid because they're not in that stage of their life. And not that there's anything wrong with it, because there's people that, once you have a kid, some people kind of just grow into that and kind of step up into that role. And it happens because, people have unexpected children all the time. But I feel like if you are in a place where you can make those wise decisions, I think that's very smart. I think another huge part of it is like finances. I'm glad you talked about that a little bit, about like even traveling, deciding to pick up and leave. Like, same with having a family. I think people need to be smarter about being prepared to whatever direction you're taking your life in regards to money. I think that's something that was a big importance to me and to you, even like in the choice of like moving away. I think it's, there's people that sometimes make irresponsible decisions because they just want to like do something different, or because at that moment it feels right. But I think like the long-term goals and decisions, so you have to be like prepared for them. I think that's wise.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, we're both earth signs, so obviously we're logical when we make decisions.
So I was waiting at one moment to bring in the zodiac and like astrology, because that is her jam. Like, she has done the charts. This is why Alessandra dressed her today in her little Libra onesie, because this is her vibe, right? And by the way, like, let me explain how into this she is. When I was pregnant, you would literally be texting me like, these are the days she's allowed to be born. These are not the days she's allowed to be born. Like this. And I was dying laughing. And like, I love it and I eat it up, but I also take it with a grain of salt. So I was like, yeah. Okay, whatever. And then like low key, she ended up being born on like one of the good days. And like Chrissy was super happy because she's like, oh, thank God.
I mean, I think that is literally, it was meant to be, because now you guys share your moon signs. You're both Cancer moons. So you're both going to be super empathetic and you're going to understand each other. You're going to understand each other more than she'll even understand Nico.
Yeah, which let's be real. I don't think Nico's my husband, by the way. He's a hardcore Capricorn. What's funny is that like she's 6 months now, and I feel like she's finally really starting to develop a little bit of personality. And we were curious to see like, who is she going to be like? Is she going to be like him or like me? And I think she's super strong physically, and that's a Nico thing. Like, Nico's bizarrely really good at every single sport. He doesn't even need to try. Like, it's very strange. And he's very athletic. So she's like intense to the point that like nurses and pediatricians have told me like she's very strong. Like, kind of saying like, It's not normal for her age, but not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But personality, like she is feisty. Like she'll like scream and kick and like move, and like when she wants something, she wants it, and like, and she's determined. Like she's already army crawling and all that stuff. So I feel like that is very me. And she babbles a lot, which she's been babbling this whole podcast. I know, mama. So I think she's gonna be pretty talkative like her mom. Doesn't know when to shut up. Yeah. But yeah, it's super funny to see like personalities and traits. And so I feel like low key, I'm gonna say this, but I don't know if you really want this, but like low key, if you want like your chart done or like you need any of that stuff, like DM Christy. I'm sure she can like it for you. My cousin-in-law, she did it for her a few months ago. And like via like through text. They've actually never even met. By the way, she literally thinks like you guys would be best friends. Every time I talk to her about anything that you say, she's like, yes, yes, I know, blah, blah, blah. She was like super happy when she did it for her, and she was like, that's so me, and blah blah blah. Also, you guys are on the same page about Beyonce album. Like, I don't like it, and look at
Yeah, because Valeria, you're wrong. It's such a good album. And I'm not even a Beyonce stan.
I don't know. It's not really like and all of the Beehive. I don't even know if that's their names, but like all of her fans right now are literally gonna probably kill me. But it's just it's not it's not doing it for me. I'm sorry. But I will say that there are good songs on it. Like I like that, but like as an album, I wouldn't say it's the best. But like literally, my point of this is like Chrissy and Chuni, what's her name, are literally like the best album that's ever been produced. Like that's the level in which they're taking it. Like Chrissy, I mean Chuni even told me she's like she thinks it's gonna like win a Grammy or something, like the of album of the year. And I was
I
like
think so too. 100%. It's good. It has to. And that's saying that as a Swiftie because this
right.
Friday, Tortured Poets Society is
She's
coming out.
she's also a Swiftie, by the way, for everyone out there that are Taylor Swift fans. Like, so that also says a lot because I feel like not that they're rivals, but like I think the world has put them as rivals because they're both like top women in their game, which that's another whole other topic. I feel like men
I was literally about to
never,
say that. I was
never
literally
like
about to say that.
there's never two men at the top of their game, or even more. There's like 100 of them, all on the top of their categories, and no one's ever like, oh, but who's better? Blah 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 blah. Like, who cares? Like, no one ever. That's not an issue. But with women, it's like, oh, it's so rare that like, do you like Beyonce or do you like Taylor? No, you can like both. Which
Yeah.
another friend of ours, Seabree, which I'll eventually talk about her too and mention. She's another bestie of ours from forever. She posted the other day a meme that was the most her thing ever. It's like a country song mixed with like a ghetto hip hop song, and the girl's wearing country boots while like booty dancing on her coffee table. Did you not see this?
I don't think I saw that
Oh my god,
she posted that.
it is so funny. And Seabree's literally like, this is the most me video I've ever seen in my life. Because Seabree, I tell her all the time, she's the whitest ghetto person I've ever met because she's very, very country and American because she grew up in like North Florida, but then she grew up like in the hood of Miami when she was like in high school. So she's genuinely both of these cultures, and it's just really funny.
Yeah, send me that. I did not see that.
Oh, I'm gonna send it to you. Yeah, for sure. Okay. So I shared about my journey of like being a mom and like all the ups and downs. I would love to know a little bit on your end and your feedback of being single in your 30s. If you want to share a little bit of what that's been like for you in this season of your life now.
So, yeah, so I got out of a 6-year relationship that I learned a lot from, a lot. I'm very much like, don't want to regret any old relationships I've had in general, just because at the end of the day, you learn from it. And I do think that a big part of that relationship is even the reason why I had the courage to do what I'm doing now, right? It all just kind of like builds upon together. But yeah, dating in your 30s is like a whole nother world. It's a whole nother universe. And I wouldn't even say that it's because I'm in my 30s. It's also just because like life is different now, right? Like me and my ex started dating when I was like, I don't know, 25, 26, something like that, right? And back then, like dating apps were like first starting, like most of the people I've met, or actually everyone that I ever dated was organically. I mean, my ex was like the world's most organic story, like literally met like on a cruise, right? But then nowadays it's like just 100% dating apps is the thing. Like I've met people organically, for sure, but that is the way that it is nowadays. And it's because it's become so normalized that also people don't even want to like really approach it as much in person or stuff like that. And this is all from like myself and conversations I've had with other people as well. And dating apps also like have ruined so many things because people think that there's just like endless options and all of that, which is a whole nother conversation on its own. But yeah, I think it's very different. Also, I mean, there's just so many different things about it. It's also like all my friends are in relationships. All my friends are literally either married, engaged, or dating someone and about to get engaged. I can like count on one hand like the amount of single friends that I have, which I think is the hardest part because even when you're again early in your early 20s or young, it's like even though you're in relationships, you also know a lot of single people. You're all going out at the same time, you're all doing these things. And it was very hard for me to get accustomed to the fact that it's like I don't have like single friends that I can just go hit up, hang out, go do all these things with. Um, so that was definitely like a challenge. Also just like not feeling understood necessarily because like Daniela, for example, because she'll like I'll make comments to her sometimes and she's like, "What do you mean? It's not hard at all." And I'm like, "Daniela, you haven't been single since how long? Like literally the last time you were single was around the same time I was last single, right? Like it's hard because you just don't relate, but you don't understand that you don't relate because you just don't get it. And I mean, I was the same way. Like, I didn't understand it because I'm thinking, oh, well, I mean, back when I was single in my 20s, like, it was easy. Like, it's just endless options. Like, you have so many people you can go out, you can just like go do whatever you want. And now it's like not really. And also, we're older, like, we have more responsibility. Like, it's not like I'm in college having fun. Like, I have other stuff that I have to get done as well. And like aligning schedules and all that. Like it's a lot. But anyways, it is still also fun because like I think they always say like in your 30s you just like don't give up anymore. And that's like exactly how I am. Like I'm not like OCD, anxious, overthinking like every tiny thing that I used to when I was like younger. I'm just like, whatever. Like, I know my worth, right? And like, I know what I want and I know like all of the things, while still also like having fun and able to enjoy it for what it is as well. So yeah, so it's a lot of layers. It's a lot. But yeah, overall still fun, I guess.
That's great. I think for sure, I think that's really insightful to like understand and talk about for people because what you were saying, like saying, oh, like people may not understand. Like even if people understand or say they understand, until you're in it, you don't really know. I feel that like similarly, like until I got recently into like a mommy group that I started joining, like I didn't realize how much I needed people in my same environment. Like I have
Hmm.
friends that have kids, they're all in different age groups. Like I think the closest is like a year or 8 months. And well, no, that was like at the time. Like now they're like 6 months older than my son. So you think, oh, like they're only 6 months older of a baby than your baby. Uh,
Hmm.
like it shouldn't be that like that off, but like it really is. And like especially like a little kid season, everything is so different. And it's like just having that understanding of compatibility of like the season that you're in your life right now, for sure, I get that. That has to be a huge thing. And like how you're saying, even then, like dating has changed so much. So like even if someone's like maybe even a year or 3 years ago was like in a different like, oh, what do you mean? Like this type of dating like works fine, whatever. Like it's so different now. Like where you're saying like dating apps and stuff. How and also because like the culture, right? Like I feel like at least for me, right, as someone who has not been on a dating app ever because I also didn't want to get on them when they were like first starting out and then I was in a relationship forever. I feel like how's the culture of like hooking up and then like serious relationship on dating apps, right? Because I feel like that's where the other worlds kind of mix or blend where you're like it's frustrating sometimes for people because they're like people are just trying to hook up even if they're saying they want a relationship, they're not.
Hmm.
Do you find that still to be an issue or like the opposite or
I think it's definitely an issue for sure. I do also think it depends on how you portray yourself on it because I have seen, and I've had like some people that I know that are on dating apps, or like I'll switch it and I'll like see like, ooh, what do the girls look like on here? Um, but and so I know a lot of women who say like, oh yeah, like men are just like wanting to hook up and blah blah blah. And I'm just like, yeah, but I you get that immediately when you like if a guy immediately says something like, oh, you're so sexy, blah blah, like I don't even respond. Or like the pictures that some people have, it's like a lot of women have like, and I mean, I'm not judging in that sense, like do whatever you want to do. If that's what you want to do, that's totally fine. But you also have to be like realistic. Like
Or what the
if I put a
expectation.
picture that's like boobs out or like ass out or whatever, like what do I who am I gonna attract, you know?
Right, right, right.
Um so for sure it is, but I'm also very like I just won't respond. I'll delete, like I just like won't put up with it basically.
Okay. More like you
So
feel
and
like
I'm
it's more
not,
of a person dating, like versus like kind of you dictate your narrative.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And also like I'm not a dating app expert at all. I literally just got on them. Like I was not in my when I was in Miami, no, I didn't date anyone from a dating app.
Because this is the other
Um,
thing of why I like wasn't into the dating apps or the idea of it. Because I'm kind of even saying now, where like even in person organically, like people don't do it as much. I feel like it's become a cop out for like men
mhm,
to feel like they can kind of hide behind it. Because it does take a, I understand it does take a lot of courage and like certain type of personality to go up to a total stranger and start a conversation and like not be creepy and not be too like weird and whatever and be normal and like hit on them and then like start dating. I understand that. But like for me, that's something that I find attractive in like a guy to like be that, take lead, take charge type of guy. I feel like this newer generation, and I don't mean like by age, I just mean like this generation of dating on online dating apps has made it easier for people to test the waters and be like, oh, like just kidding, or like, oh, maybe because like the rejection hurts them a little less, right? I guess.
mhm.
And that to me also feels like a cop out. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Do you feel that way? Or like, do you understand more like guys that are maybe not as forward or
Like
like,
in person.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. It is weird. Also, it's also like by area, right? Because I think
Okay.
guys in Miami in general are very forward. Um, versus like maybe over here they're kind of not. They're a little bit more reserved and not as forward as it is in Miami, which I will also say that is something that I've had to get used to. Because guys in Miami are just they just don't take no for an answer, you know, or they'll just like really go for it.
Right.
Whereas here it's felt like the people that I've met have been a little bit more like respectful and like have a little bit more boundaries, and they're not just like immediately trying to like kiss you within 30 seconds
Right.
of like having a conversation, you know, whereas guys in my army are very like touchy feely and very like already going for it. And it's like, bro, like, do you
Yeah.
even know my last name? Like, can you just like wait a second?
Yeah. I feel like you were saying it's culture for sure because Miami, single, I want to say single life in Miami is very like that, like very. Gorda. Que pasa? He's very fussy.
But she's like
Yeah.
still smiling.
I feel like single life in Miami is very like that because it's considered very party, city and like fun and hanging out and everything is like that vibe all the time. So I can see how that's the case. I would like to know too, like, do you feel because Miami's so Latin, do you think that it's also a cultural thing, seeing how Arizona is a lot more like white? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
And how about like, what's your perspective and view on like dating now, like versus when you were in your 20s? Like, is there something you look for in guys differently that you look for in your 20s? Like, even if it's culturally or physically or emotionally, like, what do you, the things you're looking for? Have they changed or like what's more important to you now?
For sure. Absolutely. I think I don't know. I think obviously what I want is different, kind of, but at the same time, like to my core, I think I've always known what I've wanted or what I was looking for.
Okay.
But I think now what I'll say is just that I'm a lot more like intentional. just because like of different experiences I've had and like casually dated like some pretty shitty people. And I knew that nothing was going to come from it, but now it's kind of like, okay, well, I don't even want to like it's when you're younger, you're like, oh, well, if it's just for fun, like who cares? Like I'm having a good time. Whereas now it's like, well, even if I don't necessarily have like the intention of having this be something more, like I'd rather put my time and effort in someone that's like a genuine good person versus like,
Right.
I feel like when you're younger, you really like toxic or you really like those kind of red flags. But definitely change perspective in that kind of sense for sure.
Yeah.
Um just someone and also like, who I was in when I was younger isn't the same person that I am now in certain senses. So I think it's also changed in that kind of sense. Like just I just want to see like what have you done for yourself as a person that is who you are now versus like, I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but like, I guess just
Like growth.
see where, yeah, like your growth, like what are you doing to be better? Like what are your goals? Um, yeah. There's certain things that I'll for sure still not like I won't necessarily compromise on. Like I don't want to date someone that has kids. Like that's a hard no for me.
You
And it's
find that
not like from
hard
a
like now because we're getting older. Do you feel like most people already like do have kids? Like your pool is smaller, or no, not the case?
um I don't think so, but that's also because I don't think I haven't had a problem with it personally. But I
Okay,
think just because like for me immediately it's just such a hard no that it's like I don't even think about it. I'm just like, okay, bye. Like I don't even
right.
doesn't even cross my mind. Um
Sorry, she's super fussy. Okay, I'm back. I took a little break because Alessandra needed to eat, so I'm feeding her now while we continue to do this podcast. So, do you have any prospects? Is that like too forward of a question?
um I mean, I'm casually seeing someone right now, and I'm not going to get into too much detail about it, but like things are good. He has like a lot of the good qualities that I want in someone, but we'll see. Who knows where it'll end up.
That's good.
But I will say that dating apps are hard. Dating in general is hard, like all the things, but like I feel like I've met a lot more like genuinely good people here than I have in Miami for sure.
That's
Like 1000%.
that's really good. Like wholesome.
Yeah, like wholesome, good, like good values, good intentions. Like I think I really just have nothing positive to say about dating in Miami at all. Like I don't know how you people do it out there.
Yeah, it's rough. I tell people all the time, like when people are like, "Oh wow, like how'd you find Nico?" Because he's younger than me. I'm like, listen, this is the exception. This is not the rule.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't happen.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Um, so how about like career, like navigating work life, career from like your 20s into your 30s and moving and all that? Like, how has that been for you? Because a lot of people, they don't know your story and your background, and like, I think it would be insightful for you to share some of that.
Yeah. My career journey is Uh, it's that, where do I even begin? Like, I think work-wise in general, I just really also look at work very differently than I used to. Um, Working is obviously important, your career is important. I think I accomplished all the goals that I wanted to accomplish career-wise. Um, and then I still kind of didn't feel fulfilled, right? So I went the passion route, and the thing with I think we can all agree to this is that sometimes you don't quit a job because of the job, you quit a job because of like your boss and like the person. And like that's something that I think really is unfortunate that we're not really taught about like growing up. That it's not really about like the actual job. It's about like learning how to manage people and deal with people. So I think that that was something that was really hard for me to deal with because I have just had like some horror stories with jobs before. Um, but I am also like very encouraging of, I'm just very encouraging of doing everything that's not traditional. Like I took a year off, like I did not work I mean I worked. I didn't work like a career or like work like anything that involved your brain essentially. Like I just served for a year, and something that I was like, oh, I won't do this ever again, like past like I don't know, the last time I had a serving job I was like 23 or something like that.
Right. You're
Um
saying this based on like, because people that don't know you, like you have a master's degree, like you went to school, like you just were doing a job outside of like the field of your education that you spend thousands of dollars on, which I feel like
yeah,
most
that
millennials
I
can.
technically still owe a couple grand, but whatever.
Oh yeah, yeah. My student loans have been on hold for like forever. Yeah, for sure. Um, okay, sorry. Yeah, continue.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. No one knows this about me. But yeah, so I just like took a pause, and I just wanted to like literally turn my brain off for a second and kind of like figure out what I wanted to do, if I wanted to change field, if I wanted to try something new, try something different. I basically took a year to have fun, like straight up have fun, just like start over, start fresh, like um I had like a list on my notes app that I was like, these are the top things that I want to accomplish by the end of the year. And at the end of the year, I accomplished all of them while still having fun, while still having a non-traditional life, while still doing all the things that were going to help me grow internally. Um, and I feel like having had that opportunity to be able to turn my brain off and to do something that kind of didn't really matter helped me realize like okay, now I remember like what it is that I want to do, and also just like with dating, like be more intentional about like what I want to go forth doing. And yeah, I ended up getting like a really good job, like it just all worked out for me, and I don't think that I would have been able to do it had I not just like taken a mental pause. And even while working there, like a lot of my old coworkers would be like, they would like people as they were getting to know me or whatever, they're like, oh, like do you go to school, or like have you finished school? And I'm like, oh yeah, I have like my graduate degree. And they're like, why are you working here? I'm like, because I want to. Like, it's okay, guys. And obviously they're younger, so they don't get it. Like they're just like, why would you do that? And it's like, well, you just don't know where life is gonna lead you
Right.
at all. Like you just don't know. And your perspective is just very different, like in your 20s versus your 30s. And it's okay to take a moment of like reset. Um, so yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's it.
I agree. I feel like, and that even though we're in different perspectives of like life of where we're at, I think in like at the end of the day, like the substance of what you're saying is true across like where anyone is in life is like you can get stuck somewhere. And we were talking about this earlier, being stuck, like and wanting to kind of like need to disconnect or do something to kind of freshen up to start over, like for you to find your purpose again or understand like what fulfills you. And like also I tell this to people all the time that are younger now because we're so ingrained in like study, pick your career, go to school, like then graduate and do this job and then do this job career forever that you studied. And it's like, no, like it's okay that you change your mind. It's okay that
Yeah.
you want to do the same thing for the rest of your life, you know? And obviously it sucks because it's like if you spend a lot of money and a lot of time, like let's say you like in becoming a doctor and then you do realize like after being a doctor for 10 years, like this is so not what I want to do. Like I'm more creative. I want to own a business and draw or whatever the case may be. I do think it's smart and wise to think about your financial goals and how to get there and make sure that you have the money that you need to live the kind of lifestyle that you want. And that's different for everybody. But I also think that like it's okay to not do the same thing your whole life. I don't think that that's
Hmm.
a failure, that that's bad. I think we need to start like rewiring and like retraining people of like what's okay and not okay. And I think slowly but surely it's happening. I feel like Gen Z is like one of the generations that really cares a lot about like their mental health and understand that environment of a work area is more important than the actual work. You said it, and I've heard it all the time. Like people don't leave their jobs; they leave people. And that's very, very true. And I have stayed in certain jobs and certain positions that maybe I was ready to move on from, but I didn't because the people were so great. And I've also left because the people were not so great. Um, and for sure, that's a huge, I think that's really important. And I think that I'm glad that you were able to take that time to kind of like make that decision and be like, okay, this is what I need to do. And even then, like back to what we were talking about, like of women, like how our lives are different and we're in our 30s, it's just because I feel like there's such a stigma of like whatever it needs to be by the age that you are. And I get certain things of that because for me, it was like having children biologically, because I did want to have kids and I want to have more than one. And I was getting older and I already have like a history of PCOS. And like for me, that was such a big thing that I couldn't control. But outside of that, I think there's so many other things that like we don't need to be stuck on like, oh, I haven't hit this milestone by this age. It makes me like not as good as someone else or not where I need to be. And I think that's a bunch of baloney. And I think understanding what's right for you is the most important. Because look, like you did that and you took a year to kind of like reset and you found everything that made you happy and gave you purpose and you got this job again. But like, let's say that wasn't like, what if what you wanted to do was to continue to work in the serving industry and that gave you that freedom and
Yeah.
that happiness? Like, that's okay. It doesn't need to look a certain way to say like this person is like worthy or accepted or like it's just different. Of course, it's always going to be like the majority of people with everything. The majority of people
Hmm.
read, have kids, have a family, but that's not to say that like that has to be everyone's story and that you can be fulfilled if your story is different. I think that's really important for people to understand. And then for people to also see that like, yes, it's hard to have friendships when maybe you're not on the same path of life, but that doesn't mean that you can't be really good friends. And I think that is a lot like in this dynamic it shows with us, like is when your value system and caring for one another is what's more important and trumps everything else. There's going to be seasons like anything like that are more like you're closer, you're not as close because of different things of life. But I don't think that that means that you shouldn't be friends with certain types of people because you're not living the same life. I think that
Yeah.
um I think that that's not, like something I would want to advocate. But I'm gonna be real. I do think that those type of relationships and friendships are the easier ones for sure, because I think it does take more work and effort, um, to work on like keeping up the friendship when you're not on the same page because you talk about different things. I think there's two ways of seeing it too. You can have like excitement and perspective, like now that I'm a mom and like I'm married and like you're dating, whatever. Like I like love listening to your stories and you tell me all the time, you're like, oh, I'm living like my like my single life like through like, for you girls, because we're always like, oh wait, but like I want to know like what happened and what you do and blah blah blah, because like that's just not our reality. And at the same time,
Yeah.
you're saying like, oh, I love being auntie, but like I don't want to be mommy. Yeah, that's a real thing. Like being the aunt is fun because you get the cute pictures and you get all the cuddles and the love, and then you can give her back when you're like, I want zero responsibility. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. When she poops her diaper, I'm like, here you go, have her back.
Literally, she just fell asleep. What is it? Thought she was fussy. She needed a nap.
Oh.
Yeah.
But
But
yeah, no, for sure. The part where you said about like if I were, because I did think about that at one point. I was like, maybe I want to be a server forever. Maybe I want to be a bartender forever. Who cares? And that is okay because I know a lot of people now who are kind of going through like the opposite of what I went through in the sense that they did get the stable like job that they had that they're having now for like 5, 6, 10 years, whatever. And now they're like, I wish I would have done something with passion. I wish I would have done XYZ. I wish I blah, blah, blah. But the thing is that I guess like back to my whole original thing is like you still can. Like I do hate that a lot of like there's a big like stigma with like, oh, and you're in your 30s, so like you're done. Like you already chose your life. And it's like, no, you haven't. Like you can change your life right now. We're not old. We're 33. Like that's not old. You can change your life at 38. You can change your life at 45. Like it doesn't really matter. Like there is no like expiration date. The only expiration date is when you're dead. Like other than that, you can quite literally change your life anytime that you want to. And if you want to quit your job and go do something that you wish you would have done when you were young, like go ahead and do it. And I do think also like I think a huge thing is also that people don't really talk about it as much as like I think they should talk about it, because we all want to portray like a pretty like I'm like pretty life that you're leading, you know? And like I very recently like had a conversation with someone who like I'm not really close to, but like they were telling me about how they feel super, actually now that think about it, two people I had the exact same conversation with who are like in their late 30s and they feel like very, very alone because they're starting over for the first time and they're like they moved back in with their parents and they're just like want all of these things that they're like very depressed that they haven't been able to achieve it. And I'm like, it's okay. Like just start over. Like it's fine. Like it's not, and I know it's obviously harder said than done. And I think I learned a lot to just like give myself grace. And that's not to say that I'm perfect because obviously like I've had moments where I'm like crying on my couch, like, did I make the right decision? But then like the next day I'm like, yeah, I did. I'm great. I'm awesome. Like I'm gonna do whatever I want to do because I can. And we do definitely get stuck in a uh again, like with the whole societal norms and all of that stuff, like it is very scary to say, like I had to do XYZ, but like if you're at the end of the day doing something that's gonna help you long term or like help like achieve your goals or whatever, like then that's okay. Like you shouldn't feel like embarrassed by the avenues that it takes for you to get to that point, essentially.
For sure. I totally agree with that. I think as an example, because I don't think like financial success is everything, but like I think a perfect example of that is like people when they become really successful and rich, like now Jeff Bezos, no one ever talks about the fact that Jeff Bezos like started his business out of a garage in like his 30s and it was like grinding it, right? People only see him today as like the mega billionaire and like he spends and has and whatever. And it's like at the end of the day, once you get to like where you feel accomplished, no one's gonna be talking about like, oh, you remember when Christy was like moving back home with her mom? Like that's irrelevant. Like it's so small in the grand scheme of things. And I feel like people at that moment we feel like, damn, I'm setting myself back. Like, damn, people are like, I spent 7 years in a relationship and like now I'm single and I spend all the time. Like, you're your biggest critic and hard person because at the end of the day, like now that I'm in a healthy, great place in my life, all we all the people around me that care about me only see this. They don't see any of that. And I think that's something that
Exactly.
remember, like, and we have to remember for ourselves too, like it's about where you are the most happy. And I agree, like I think part of the stigma of why it should be talked about more is like that it's okay to start over. I think that's why people are so fearful of it and it feels so down or so negative because it's not talked about as often. If it's talked about more, it would be more normalized that like, oh no, like they're just starting over. Like it's not like,
Yeah.
oh wow, like the world is falling apart. You know what I mean? Like versus like
Hmm.
a script because at the end of the day, it's real life and people go through things all the time. And even if it's like there are things that can happen to people that is like totally outside of your control, but I'm just saying, like, there are so many different ways of things that can like happen that you just have to see a different avenue and way of thinking and not get stuck in like, oh, I'm like less than or sad or down on myself because I'm starting over or whatever that case may be. She's so knocked out. Yeah,
But
for sure.
yeah, I definitely wish that more people were to be more open about like what they're going with versus just like the fancy like look at my beautiful wedding and life is great and I'm amazing and blah blah blah. Like let's talk about like what's happening too
For sure. I feel like
because
social media
everyone can relate.
is such an easy place to like pretend, right? To show your highlights. I think lately it's become more real and like people are trying to show more of that. I think the hard thing about this is that at the end of the day, of why even sometimes showing like the authenticity seems kind of fake is because you have to like set up a phone and record yourself. And like that's why it's hard. And as someone like I, as a content creator, like I sometimes find like that tough too, where I'm like, is it going to be authentic that I'm talking about like something when like you're not really living it? You're like getting yourself ready to share. But I'll tell you something, I think that's better than not doing it at all because we need to just be more transparent and more like open about it. I'm going to share this just on like the part of me that you shared with me recently. Someone that you know had asked you that I also know, we went to high school together, literally made a comment to you and asked you like was concerned like how am I doing in my relationship because I never post my husband and like was like kind of like sad and you were like dying laughing and I also died laughing when you told me because instantly I already knew. I was like, oh my god, how funny. because I don't post my husband a lot on social media, and I post myself a lot, and like my baby, my life, like I share a lot of my life, but there's a lot of my life I don't share. My family barely ever gets on social media because they don't want to be. They're very like, no, thank you. My husband either, like, if he's ever on, it's because like he gave me permission to post it. Like, he doesn't even on his own, he doesn't even use his account. Like I tell him all the time, like if it wasn't for me like automatically tagging you, people would think you're still single, like not married, don't have a kid, like, and it's just really funny because you were told her, you're like, honestly, like they're in a really good place, they're very happy, they're in a healthy like situation. And it's like, it's so funny how social media can perceive something so different that like
Mm-hmm.
to this person that doesn't really have interaction with me and just knows me off of social media can think that maybe that part of my life is a certain way, and it's not. And this happens the exact same opposite, right? You can think like, oh, they look super happy, and they're like all super, like they're super miserable. So I just feel like taking a grain of salt, like what we see on social media that people portray, because at the end of the day, also remember like we are in control of what we're posting, whether that's positive or
Mm-hmm.
negative. And even then, not to say like, even when someone else is in control, like all these celebrities with TMZ, like half of it is always like gossip too, or like extra, like exaggerated or whatever the case may be. So it's like, I think that it's hard because that's where we get like our perception from, and we want people to be more transparent and talk about it. But at the same time, it's hard because like I feel like no one wants to be like that person, right? We all want to say, and I get it because we're all like, damn, like I wish I knew somebody that was going through what I was going through. But you don't want to share what
Yeah.
you're going through because it's like personal and
Yeah.
private. And I get that because I have felt that so many times. I've tried and learned to be to like share more because through the years, and I've done like therapy and I've done like group therapy and stuff. One of the biggest blessings I ever felt was when I started hearing other people share their stories. And maybe it wasn't anything, like it wasn't exactly what I was going through, but the feelings were the same. And I felt very like justified and I could relate. And I think that was so important. So I think like building community, sharing things is really, really important, which is even why I wanted to do this podcast and like have both of us talk on it and like share one about our friendship, two where we are in life, and explain like how we've continued to be friends, how we still have a relationship, and how that looks. Because I feel like people are so limited in their thinking, or maybe don't really understand or think like this is how what I feel, but I don't know anybody else like that's going through it, or like real people, right? Not like I feel like
Yeah.
sometimes too, like when maybe not to say that they don't matter, but like when celebrities will do it sometimes people are like, yeah, but like they're a celebrity, so it's not the same because they have this or they have that, which I also think is baloney, but whatever, because you can cry in your Mercedes, you still are crying. Um, but my point is that like I just feel like this is the point of why I wanted to do this podcast. It's just like showing and navigating how things are different so that people can relate to it and say, like, hey, you know what? I do relate to Christy and I don't relate to Valeria as much, or I relate to Valeria in this area and Christy more in this area, or vice versa. Because I think it's important to feel heard. And I think we feel heard when other people share like their stories and where they've been. Unfortunately, I wish I could have ended this podcast a little bit more gracefully, but our last clip of our podcast has literally erased off the face of the earth. I cannot find that clip. And it's basically us wrapping up and me telling Christy that I appreciate so much for her coming on the podcast and sharing with us, and hoping that you guys enjoyed this episode. To make sure to follow me on Instagram at Chic by V, and tune in for more future episodes. Hopefully the next time our last clip won't be lost and you guys will be able to enjoy the footage. So for you all that are watching it on YouTube or on Spotify, you're clearly looking at a black screen right now because I don't have the rest and I am a new mom and there's no way I'm getting dressed up and doing all the same outfit just to say a goodbye video. So this will do. You got to do what you got to do. Bye.